where you're from, what you're looking to get out of this webinar. It'd be nice to get some intros going before we kick things off. I've just been notified that the chat's actually turned off, so maybe don't do that. But we will be a couple of minutes. We could see people coming in just now. So if you hold fire, we'll kick off in about a minute or so. Thank you. Right, I think we're good to go. Adam, what do you think? Should we dive in?
Yeah, all good from my side. Let's start.
Okay, cool. All right, let's take it away. Just so I say that, I can see a few people diving in, but for those that have joined us, we will kick things off. So let's start with quick fire introductions. Adam, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, no worries. Hi everyone, my name's Adam, or Ads. I'm the strategy director here at Six and Flow, and I lead a lot of our sort of product design and then helping with a lot of the scope and technical projects as well. I've been working quite closely with Dan on a new RevOps sort of offering for Six and Flow. Dan, do you want to crack on?
Yeah, fantastic. So Daniel Medios, Chief Strategy Officer, Ebster. Ebster's a revenue intelligence platform focused on identifying the signals that best influence your win rate, sales cycles, and deal values. We work with hundreds of companies and have partnered up with Six and Flow to very much bring this to life. And so the focus of today's session is very much on digging into the detail, finding the data that we have access to, and hopefully move on from some of those RevOps webinars we typically see and give you some actionable insights. So to give some context behind what we're going to be covering, we've actually analysed 3.2 million opportunities through 2022. So we live oftentimes in a world of what we think, a lot of gut feel in sales and revenue operations. And we're trying to move from that state of what we think to what we know and eradicate gut feel and guesswork. So what we did is we collaborated with 364 businesses worldwide in various different industries at different stages of their growth. And we plugged into the opportunities of CRM to understand where we really were in the world of B2B sales. How were companies really performing, to try and provide benchmarks, indicators that we could hold ourselves against. And in digging into that detail, some of those stats, we had a clear perspective of what we regard as the state of B2B sales, very much in 2022, but many signs that we're consistently seeing in 2023. And I think many of these stats will resonate with you and probably in large part highlight some of the things that you're seeing on the front line. But what was clear to us when we were collaborating with these companies is that the world of sales at the moment is very, very hard. What we found is that just 29% of reps actually made quota through 2022. More alarmingly, 18% of reps didn't even have a quota to start with. No target to focus on. Nothing to benchmark themselves against. And when we actually got a little bit closer to velocity, which is made up of win rates, deal values, and sales cycles, and ultimately how productive or how efficient reps were at converting revenue, it was worse than it's ever been. Win rates were dropping drastically through 2022. The average deal values were a lot less as we saw companies were a bit more tentative committing to bigger or longer term contracts. And we had a huge amount of stalling, deal slippage. Deal slippage actually was, again, a record high, certainly by Q4 in 2022, as more stakeholders were involved in sales processes and businesses were less and less willing to commit to new products. They wanted to understand the lay of the land as the market was changing all around us. Status quo started to beat out on more deals. People were often reluctant for change or committing to change. But with all of that being said and done, what we did find was that there was a silver lining in all of this. Whilst we recognise that the world of B2B sales is hard and harder than it's ever been, and we have to work harder to convert the revenue or opportunities that we have into revenue, the most exciting thing from our perspective was that we saw some silver lining within all of that. We saw that there were some consistent attributes or indicators or factors that align to the best performers in market. Those reps are 29% that were consistently making quota, quarter on quarter. And so here we've got three primary examples. We found those individuals who were the best performers were 3 times more likely to have strong relationships with key stakeholders, influential people through the sales process that they need to manage. They had better, stronger relationships. They were also more likely to use a sales methodology, something we'll expand on very shortly, but they actually had a very diligent approach to their sales process, their qualification criteria, and they followed it almost to a letter more often than not. And the other interesting insight was that they actually saw value in leveraging their CRM. They were interacting with it more frequently than some of the other individuals. They're more conscious of reviewing their deals, updating the deals, and reflecting on where they were and identifying ways in which they needed to progress those deals, most likely conducted through consistent pipeline reviews. Now, what we've seen more broadly in the market as 2022 came to a close is that businesses were really struggling to sustain the growth that they were aspiring for. We lived in a world ultimately that we can conclude as growth at all costs, where we would throw more in terms of investment into our marketing efforts, our sales efforts, the technology that we're bringing in. And in pursuit of growth, the consistent answer that we came back to when we were trying to sustain the growth that we wanted to achieve was, well, let's do more, let's invest more. And the result of that is that huge amounts of revenue, huge amounts of capital was being weighted every year. And we can see the example here from Boston Consulting Group. Through their analysis, businesses were wasting and are wasting up to $2 trillion a year. And that's no longer sustainable. And right now, with interest rates going up, ongoing uncertainty in the market, and a situation where it's harder and harder to raise additional capital, we have to recognize that that growth at all cost playbook, the idea of doing more and throwing up to $2 trillion a year in pursuit of growth blindly, is at an end. And we have to now pursue a new playbook, a predictable and efficient playbook. And these are some of the things that Adam and I will be diving into today. Because the old way, which relied heavily on, doing more for the sake of doing more and having fragmented systems between marketing, sales, and customer success, and ultimately relying more often than not on gut feel because they never had a complete picture of what was really happening, we now have to move into a state of knowing. Better alignment between marketing, sales, and customer success. More concentration on building that alignment where we understand what we need to be focusing on at any moment in time. And we have greater confidence in what's likely going to lead to better success as we move forward.
Yeah, so so guys, by the way, if anybody's got any questions at any point, please just, fire them into the Q&A section. We're happy to go through them. But I think just to kind of reiterate what Dan's talking about there is that we've done hundreds of these projects where we've implemented CRMs, we've helped with marketing, and we've helped to sort of align marketing with sales as well. And what we've always found is that a lot of companies, they basically have fragmented data systems. Their teams are working in silos. We don't really have any shared goals about, about revenue or about service, or, there's a lot of misalignment. And then because of this, they all work off in different directions. And there's a huge amount of technical debt. There's a huge amount of, again, just people not really knowing what they should be doing in order to get the best out of their company. But then what we're trying to do with RevOps is move away from that into where sales, marketing, and service are all like aligned, and they're aligned around revenue, but they've got the data that's powering all of their decisions as well. So that you're able to see kind of what we call like the golden string, where you can see exactly what marketing is doing, how that's impacting sales, and how the customer service team is then feeding back into all of that to give repeat business. And again, once we implement that, what you start to see is kind of what we have on the next slide. So Dan, if you just go to the next slide. So if you look at your normal funnel, you've got your demand generation, and then you've got your sales management, and you've got your customer success. And that's all comes under the umbrella of RevOps. And if we look at this funnel at the bottom, let's say you've got 100 leads and you convert 30 of them. And then again, you can see that once you get through all of that, your revenue is around 12,000. And what the majority of people do is they think, well, the answer is I'm just going to get 1,000 leads and that will increase the numbers. But the fatal mistake of that is that to get those 1,000 leads is really difficult, and it takes a lot of resources out of your company that you don't have. And if you did have unlimited resources, this wouldn't be an issue. So instead of looking at how can I get more leads in, if you look at the second funnel, or the second part of the funnel there, where if you just look at qualifying 5% more leads, converting 4% of those leads, and then improving your win rates, again, you could do that using templates, playbooks, basically replicating what your best salespeople are doing. But all of a sudden, Dan, if you just hit the next button there, then all of a sudden you're seeing 110% increase in your overall revenue. And I think that's sort of the core value of RevOps. It's about finding those small incremental changes which you can make across all parts of your business, not just do more, so that at the tail end of it, you're improving your revenue, because at the end of the day, that's the metric that matters the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we're going to take you through are the 7 steps, the proven steps that lead to predictable and efficient revenue growth, and a great starting point. And typically a starting point where people squirm because it's somewhat obvious, but truthfully quite boring, is that you have to start with a high quality foundation of data. What we've discovered is that the best performing businesses are now leveraging data and insight to identify where they should be focusing time, effort, and energy at any moment in time. And what Adam was alluding to previously is that with this newfound capability that RevOps can bring to any business, it's the data and insights that move you from a world of think you need to be putting more in for the sake of getting more at the other end, to now having the data and insight to optimize for the effectiveness and efficiency. And what we typically see when we engage with customers is that they're typically operating in a world where you've got this tip of the iceberg view. You know, at the top level, this is maybe what you typically have within the CRM. Very little information, incomplete information. And with that incomplete information, again, you're course correcting around gut feel, because you don't have visibility until the activities or relationships you're being built. You don't understand how your activities are correlating with the opportunities you're creating, or how you're managing the opportunities through to close successfully. And what we find is that there's a huge amount that's existing beneath that water level that you need to get access to. So think about all of the activities that occur, those emails, the meetings, the texts, the different types of relationships that are being built. The more advanced organizations also bring other signals such as marketing data, product usage data, intent data into building a complete picture of the customer and understanding how they contribute. Because consistently what we've seen is that as many as 70% of the contacts that your team are interacting with every single day are missing from the CRM. And that's not touching on the fact that many of those contacts are turning over all the time. You've got people where their job titles are changing, the phone number's changing. Perhaps they've left the business. You're running blind more often than not. And when you dig into the detail, many companies will celebrate the fact that they've got a CRM that's splitting at seams. You've got tens of thousands of contacts. But when you can add in this additional dimension, understand the activity, which is a leading indicator of the strength of relationships, more often than not, we find that less than 2% of contacts in a CRM have anything close to what we would resemble as a relationship, a meaningful level of engagement. And all the while, the typical solution for these businesses that are trying to solve the problem is it's an administrative duty for reps. I need them to diligently log into the CRM to record every activity, every step. We live in the 21st century. These sort of basic principles of connecting data and automating data should eradicate any of the busy work. We want to live in a world where you've got a perfect view of everything that's happening within the CRM, to take it from a system of record into a system of actionable insight, where all of the information is complete and it's providing decisions that can lead reps to more effective results, rather than a world where it looks like a glorified database where they're having to work through it and try and understand what's really happening. So the second piece, once you have that understanding of all the relationships you have, all of the activities that are occurring, is what influence do relationships really have on revenue? And it's a bit of a leading piece here because, as you can see, we've referred to it as relationships drive revenue. The whole concept of a CRM is that it's customer relationship management. And relationships are still and will always be the most important factor when understanding your sales processes. So what we can do here is understand, actually, in a world where we have more stakeholders than ever before, how influential are those stakeholders in a sales process? You can start to look at the ICP more broadly as well. Which types of companies, such as the industry, the size, the location, but you can get more granular around technographic data, for example, or funding, or their approach to recruitment. What other signals around the companies and the state of the companies is leading to us converting revenue most efficiently? A balance of that win rate, sales cycle, and deal value. So you can target more of your efforts from marketing into sales in those particular pockets. So we can identify, for example, that a particular segment is leading to better conversions. But then within that, you want to understand the persona. So we target the business, but what individual is most influential? But then you start to come around and go, okay, well, if this is very quickly becoming our playbook, how many of the opportunities do we have that include that individual? And again, it starts to become a leading indicator, something that you can lean on time and time again as now a new way of approaching your sales processes or even marketing efforts. Because what we've discovered, coming back to the B2B benchmark report, is that relationships are pivotal to your success, and certainly the leading indicator that you lean on. So what we were able to do is identify all of the activities that were occurring in relation to specific contacts, understand the contact's relationship to a specific opportunity. And when you look at the closed won and closed loss data, our ability to actually score the strength of relationship out of 100 gave a clear indication that high quality relationships will lead to you having 3 times better win rates and actually reduce that sales cycle by as much as 40%. And these are the types of indicators that you can provide to your sales team that can help them concentrate efforts not on starting cold and moving people through to a high quality relationship, but when you're in flight, coming to the end of your quarter, where have we got opportunities for marginal gains, as Adam alluded to at the beginning? Moving relationships from good to great is where you're going to see the best return for your efforts. And again, it will lead to you closing more deals faster, but also an effective leading indicator. If you don't have the relationship early, is this really an opportunity? But I've touched on it before, and now you can see with the data that more relationships are involved than ever in sales processes. And it's crucial to understand not just the type of business you need to target and the particular persona, but what other individuals are actually influencing the sales cycle. As an average, we have seen over the last 3 years that the number of relationships involved in sales processes is increasing all the time. And through 2022, it actually increased 25% as more people were influencing the sales cycles. And so you have to give a strong consideration to not just who we're targeting, but how many relationships should we target? And as you can see indicated here, we have that sweet spot of perhaps 6 to 8 relationships, 6 to 9 relationships that we should be targeting, and that's what we should be striving for. But it's not just building a relationship for relationship's sake or striving to get the key persona, the decision maker. If you're smart about this and some of the insights we have provided to our clients, you're able to identify which individual to target, but when to target them. So looking at your best performing sales deals and playing that back again, we were able to highlight in this example that although a client was looking for a VP of product ultimately to close a deal, around the evaluation stage here, or the latter stages of the process, we also have finance and legal and infosec influencing the deal. The breakthrough was identifying that you had a more junior member of the team, in this instance, a product manager, who could actually give your sales team better visibility of where the company was at, so they could build a more personalized, more compelling proposition by the time they're able to get to the middle and latter stages of sales process with a proposal that really resonated with the organization, which turned the whole go-to-market strategy on its head. Rather than striving for the hard to get, the decision makers, you could now be more effective in targeting those champions earlier in the sales process.
Couple of things I just want to add to what Dan said there. I think people think that the relationship in the sales process is just whether or not somebody likes you or whether or not you build a really great rapport with them, which is true. And like some salespeople are just amazing at nailing that straight off. But I think what Ebster brings to the table is that it sort of moves past that, because an effective sales relationship is like how effective, like how much you're communicating with somebody, whether or not they're reciprocating that communication, whether they're booking in meetings. It brings a real depth of data around what each of those individual action points are to give you a really good view of how strong your relationship is with certain stakeholders. And even in the persona slide that Dan just showed there as well, another thing that it does is it looks at job titles to give indicative personas, which you can then sort of overwrite if that person is outside of a persona. So EBSA does a lot of the heavy lifting with actually figuring out who you should be targeting, how strong those relationships are. And where sort of the third step comes in is once you know your business and you've got that data, it's about identifying what that wider market looks like as well, and then segmenting on not what you want the market to be, but what the market actually is. So essentially mapping the landscape and figuring out where is our product offering going to be most effective, where is there going to be, you know, the most amount of opportunity for us, and can we then change our product to match that segment, or do we need to? And then once you've understand that landscape, then it's about effective targeting. And because you now have data points from EBSA, you can target more effectively to understand essentially, okay, within the entire landscape, what is that niche where we can get into, what's going to give us the most opportunity. And then the next thing that we need to do is, once we understand that, is actually look at our positioning. So is the product positioned? Is our content strategy right? Is our sales pitch right? Do we actually have the right position in order to go after this market effectively? Now, what if you just go to the next slide, please, Dan. Now, what and you may need to give me a hand with this, but essentially what EBSA does effectively, really effectively as well, is it brings in intent data. So what it's able to show you is not only who you should be targeting, but also like at what stage you should be targeting based on intent signals from Bombora and from its another data partner. And just to give a practical use case for this, a lot of time whenever you do, let's say, account-based marketing or any sort of high value, you know, you're bringing any high value offering to market, you may want to sell a product within a month, but the buying cycle of that particular prospect may actually be 1 to 2 to 3 years. Now, essentially, if your expectations, your goals are set at closing all of this business within a month, you're never going to be able to meet those. So what we're able to do now with Bombora intent data is actually figure out where people are in their buying cycle, so that we can see, okay, well, are they in early research stage? Are they in vendor selection stage? Which part of their buying cycle are they in? So that we can then tailor our approach and position ourselves effectively.
Absolutely. And so the key focus here, as it's summarized at the bottom, is now we understand which persona we need to be targeting. We understand better how we can align marketing and sales in their efforts to provide a more seamless buying experience. Typically, what we find in the market is that buyers now are more informed than ever before. And you see numerous stats where they do 80% of their research before they even engage with you. And so what we're looking to do is understand, as part of your go-to-market strategy, what those leading indicators are that can help you determine when the right time is to engage with them, but then who you need to be engaging with, and how you can equip your sales team to align to your marketing efforts to support that buying experience and the different individuals and their different needs and requirements. And so when we get into it, some of the things that we're able to surface and some of the things that you should really be considering is that, firstly, intent is having a material impact on businesses' ability to convert revenue efficiently. Again, coming back to these factors influencing velocity. When we sat down with clients, what we're able to see is that there's a material difference between trying to manage sales processes where the intent isn't necessarily there. Perhaps you're starting to educate the prospect on the pain they haven't necessarily realized they've had, and then take them on a journey on why your solution is most appropriate. As opposed to living in a world where intent is enabling you to identify those that are aware of a pain and beginning the process of researching for different solutions, and then starting to identify which vendor is most appropriate, which is where you want salespeople to align, because that's when they're most effective, and enabling people to buy through a more consultative engagement. And so when you start to run the stats or analysis, you can look at opportunities over the last 12 months and go, well, what was our sales process like when we had no intent? And you can see there's consistently a big step change between no intent and some intent. But then there's different forms of intent, the different topics that you can start to identify. And the really special piece is when you're able to identify what we refer to as clusters, combination of different factors that enable you to see the very best opportunities and strike at the right time with those accounts when they're in market. And it enables you to really drive a far more effective go-to-market strategy. You want to be listening to these signals in market, understanding which companies are on your radar, but again, strike whilst the iron's hot. And rather than living in a world which is a typical scenario we saw with the growth at all cost playbook of let's throw in more accounts and then let's feed them into automated cadences and then blitz the market with paid ads. You shouldn't be chasing those processes almost over, those opportunities almost over a cliff, because they're not efficient and it's certainly not scalable. Instead, by understanding which companies and which intent is most influential, you find what we would deem to be those micro segments in market, and we can identify those active accounts that are most likely to yield the very best results and ensure that you have enough of the highest quality pipeline coverage required to pass on to your sales team.
So I think one of the things when you have this data in is that you can start to build scores not just on relationships, or you can build them on qualification, you can build them on engagement, and then that allows your sales team to start to prioritize much more effectively. Whenever you pair that with a qualification matrix, then this allows you to start to model the behavior on your best performers. And we've all been in that situation where you've got one star performer and you're just, if I could clone you, I'd clone you 10 times. And essentially, some people are just going to qualify and do all of this stuff without really thinking about it. But whenever you're able to take what your star performer is doing and put that into one of these matrices and then train all of the rest of your team on it, with Ebsta, with whatever your CRM platform is, where HubSpot house, so I'm going to go with HubSpot. Essentially, you're able to say, okay, well, my top performer actually qualifies based on this metric 85% of the time, compared to my lowest performer, who they only identify at 8% of the time. Now, on the left-hand side here, we've got MedPick, but you could have any qualification matrix. It could be as simple as BANT or GPCT, or you could be looking at like Scotsman, whatever qualification approach you use. Really, it's about finding the data points where you're able to see how effective your star performers are against your lowest performers. Now, there's been a massive adoption of MedPick across in the last 2 years from Ebsta's research as well. And whenever companies are using this, their win rates are improving by 3x. But what the core point for us, and whenever we started looking through all this RevOps stuff, was high performers are going to qualify nearly 4 times more than the lowest performers. Now, if I can take a high performer and essentially say, I'm going to create a playbook based on how you qualify, what are the core things you look for, what are the snippets that you say in every sales call, and I can just replicate that for my lowest performers over a 3 to 6 month period, then all of a sudden we're starting to build that consistent performance across the team, which becomes a lot more powerful for actually generating revenue.
Absolutely. And what we're seeing is in market right now, there's a huge drive to see us effectively codify, as Adam alluded to, the attributes, but also the processes behind the top performers. So you don't get those peaks and troughs or standout stars, and you've got a whole team looking at what they're doing and trying to understand it more. Instead, if you've got a consistent process, you will over time see the averages of your team level out. You get that consistency, but you also start to see not just greater quota attainment across the team, but you can also ramp new reps more effectively, more efficiently, with a higher degree of success. Because what you're ultimately doing is compounding this knowledge and understanding and feeding it into the playbooks that will ensure that new individuals coming on aren't living in a world of hit and miss. You can actually give them the templates for success, and you can start to measure and benchmark that and track it over time.
Just one more point on this, and where this becomes really powerful is whenever you've got a flexible CRM, like HubSpot, for example, you do have the ability to create playbooks, but you've also got the ability to create templates and customize your entire record view. So you can almost influence the behavior of your salespeople without them ever really, consciously knowing what you're doing. And by just putting the right information in front of them at the right time, so you've got your relationship scores, your qualification scores, and they're only seeing the properties that they need to fill out, you're actually reducing the amount of admin that your salespeople need to do, giving them those actionable insights, but also sort of just keeping them set on this process, which, as Dan's research shows, at the end of the day, it's going to improve revenue. But Dan, if you want to go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're really picking up speed and momentum. We've moved through the stages of having the data, understanding the types of businesses and relationships you need to build, being more effective with targeting the right companies at the right time with intent, and now having a standardized approach to sales processes. It really is a case of building out a complete picture and recognizing the influence of all these different factors on your win rates, your sales cycles, your deal values, and distilling it down to individual teams or individual products that you may have. And once you go through that exercise, you can now start to codify the sales process and leverage these insights as leading indicators. So you can identify risk in the pipeline faster and ultimately determine the next best action to increase your chance of success with any individual deal. And so here we have examples. We've got those relationships. How many do we need to target? The personas, which types of businesses you need to target, how you need to be following a sales methodology and building high quality relationships, but also tracking quickly through those deals in those earlier stages. And it's these sort of insights that will give you greater confidence in where you are and where you need to be focused. But it is a revelation for individual salespeople when they're going through those coaching sessions with managers or VPs, where they understand, what am I doing right, but where do I need to focus to improve results? And actually, what can I learn from others so we can grow and develop further? And beyond this, the more advanced organizations that we have may use the sales methodology, but may also progress to a point where they're actually scoring the qualification criteria. It's not just a case of recording the information, but to what level have we recorded it? As you're evolving through the sales process and asking more and more questions to understand the lay of the land and really unearth the pains and try and quantify the pains and the impact on the business, you can see the progression of reps starting to score that and weight that as their confidence levels increase and they've got better visibility of the nature of the challenges that their prospects are facing. But you also have other signals. Start to consider product usage, particularly if you're running a PLG motion, for example, product-led growth, where typically most of your opportunities come initially from users or companies starting to use your tools. And as you're starting to track that through, maybe through trials as well, what influence is that having on your sales cycles? Intent, we touched on it before, but what topics are people searching for? Marketing activities, how they're interacting with different pieces of content through your website, and which campaigns have they come in from? All of these signals are incredibly influential, but it's not binary. They all have a different influence at different stages down to individual reps. And so it's important to be mindful of all of that. And that then takes us on to the next piece, which is once you have that complete understanding of the data, the relationships, the different factors that are influencing revenue, you want to get on the front foot. You don't want to be charging ahead, looking in the rearview mirror. You want the insights in real time to identify simply where to focus your attentions, what the high potential deals are that you can close quicker and more efficiently, or maybe risk in the pipeline where you can reduce that risk or even fail faster. And so you want to think about a way in which you can take those insights and start to alert individuals to where they need to focus. A far more effective way to help reps prioritize their deals rather than stage or close date or value, which is what you typically see. And pipeline reviews then move from being those gut feel updates to the ones that you really need to focus on. This one's at risk. This one has a deal score that's too low. And so some of the things that we look at is providing that deal score out of 100, where you can identify the health of a deal that extends beyond those gut feel pieces, ordering lists based on different stages or amounts, or trying to really forecast based on the weighted progression of those deals based on stage. So this multi-dimensional perspective benchmarked against previous success is enabling you to identify again, the health of the deal, and with positive and negative factors, which can be written directly into the CRM, highlighting, have we got enough stakeholders involved, or have we got relationships with the right persona? Is the level of intent high enough? Have we sourced it through a channel which is more effective than others? Or negative factors, we don't have any future activities. The engagement's trending low. We're losing momentum because it's been too long in stage, or there's been a negative signal or trend, such as the amount decreasing. All of these pieces will help for a more informed approach to your sales strategy and where to focus efforts, leading to reps understanding what they need to really look into. And with the positive and negative factors, it finally becomes actionable. They can quickly identify what they need to look at, whether it's in the CRM or another system you may be using, that really brings it all to life.
Can I just go back to the previous slide there for a second, Dan? So I think one couple of points to add on this as well. There's a big focus here on the sales teams and essentially trying to make your sales team prioritize more effectively. And again, that is something that 100% needs to happen. But whenever it comes to this deal score, what's also really important is the impact that it has on different departments. So for example, because we understand the deal score and we also understand the relationship score, and that's written directly into the CRM, it starts to de-risk any of your renewals as well. Because let's say that you managed to close this deal and then they're coming up for renewal in 12 months time. Your customer success team or your account managers, whatever you want to call them, they can also look back at the relationship scores and figure out who the key person is within that company and who's got the strongest relationship across the CRM with them, and basically who they need to leverage in order to start those renewal conversations. So it de-risks that whole piece. And also in terms of your marketing side of things, if you're if you're an internal marketer or your marketing team can go into your CRM and they can see, well, who have we got the strongest relationship with, then they can leverage them for testimonials. So it's not just a sales focused exercise. It has a massive impact on all the different departments across your business. It's really just about getting the data in there and again making it actionable. Which can you just go on to the next slide, please? Is kind of what we're going to cover here. So the thing is that CRMs, they can only really do so much. They only really give you mechanical data. And we sort of run this exercise with our prospects. Like if you look at two deals in your CRM, there's no difference between these two. They're both worth 100,000. The last activity date was yesterday. That could be an email, it could be a note, it could be a task. You don't really know. And let's say that you do have some form of lead scoring in there, so a qualification score. They both equal 70. So realistically, this is kind of mechanical data. It's not really telling you anything. It's sort of data for data's sake. Now, where a tool like Ebster comes in and sort of with the data that it provides as well is it gives you a much richer view of every single deal and every single object within your CRM. So now whenever you're looking at them, instead of just looking at two identical deals, you're looking at a higher relationship score, more emails being sent, more phone calls, more meetings booked. You've got more stakeholders involved, and from those stakeholders, you've got good decision makers in there as well. Then whenever it comes to which deal do I prioritize, that your salesperson is going to go for deal A 9 times out of 10. And what this allows you to do is it's not about making the perfect decision every single time. There's always going to be outliers, but it allows you to make less wrong decisions and prioritize better on where you think your sales team's time is going to be more effective. And then if we were to go back to almost the start of the presentation, then all we're trying to do is increase those scores by 4 to 5% using this data. And we know what the impact is going to be at the tail end, which is increased revenue. Dan, over to you.
So now, as we progress through, it's about taking these insights and building them into a consistent cadence. And so what we see from the best-in-class organizations is that they have built from the ground up. They have a clear understanding and appreciation of the data and where they need to focus on what insights are contributing to their success. And they're training and developing their sales teams against a consistent methodology that they can start to better understand and track. But where the rubber really touches the road, moving on from just having those insights integrated into CRM, is having a consistent approach to running your whole sales operation. And so we talk at length, Six and Flow and Ebster, about building out a forecast cadence, a consistent approach to pipeline reviews with very specific topics where you can dig into the detail and actually identify where you need to focus efforts based on very, very specific questions. And what you want is the tooling available to you through the CRM and beyond to actually answer those questions quickly, efficiently, ideally with minimum input from reps or minimum admin required from reps. So when you're running those pipeline reviews, they're far more data-driven and they're far more effective for managers guiding reps through what they need to be focusing on, with the byproduct being a clear understanding of where you are that leads to more accurate forecasts that can then roll up to leadership. So finally, the teams can sing from the same hymn sheet. So some of the key questions we have here are, well, which deals have trended positively and negatively? As you can see with the visual on the right-hand side, you can have different color coding to indicate that perhaps the stage or the amount has increased or decreased. What deals are at risk and why? Well, with a deal score, you're able to identify quickly of all the deals you're managing, which ones are really struggling right now, and move on from that stage-based forecasting you are typically leaning on. With the positive and negative factors, you can understand why. And as you progress through this, you can now identify what the next best action should be. How are we going to close this deal? Are we progressing with those? And you want to identify which individuals do we need to target to progress with those actions to increase our chance of success. And have we, again, obtained enough of the right information through the qualification process and the sales methodology we're leaning on to build a complete picture of the opportunity and enable these prospects to buy more successfully. So it becomes a fully integrated process that finally, as I mentioned before, helps reps understand where to focus and why, but it builds confidence and clarity and alignment between reps with managers through those pipeline reviews, leading to more accurate forecasts that rolls up to VPs or CROs, where again, everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet. Now, once you have all of that in play, the crucial thing is recognizing you're never finished. You are always looking for areas to optimize and improve and develop, because the market changes around you and your approach to sales will change and different people are influencing the processes you have. So if you want to stay ahead, you have really, really tight feedback loops, and you have the data and insight now as a complete picture of how that is most relevant down to individual AEs. And you should be stress testing your go-to-market strategy on a consistent basis. So as an example of what we have here, now we have the full visibility of all the contributing factors to an AE. We can differentiate the top performers from the middle of the pack and the low performers. We can understand what their win rate, sales cycles, deal value should look like, but we can align that to actually their approach that they take to managing deals through to close and what type of deals they're managing. So you can quickly identify, not in broad brushstrokes, different things and sales coaching you need to do for the whole team, but down to individuals, what's working, what's not working. Some individuals are suffering from smaller deals or longer sales cycles. It's an immediate cue to, are you focusing on the right ICP? Have you got the right level of intent? Low level of engagement, typically with the wrong people. Again, down here, it's about training on, are you targeting the right individual? And are you maintaining momentum by focusing on that high quality relationship? But then when you do have those individuals involved, are you following that consistent approach to your sales process? Are you adopting the tools and the guides that are being integrated into your everyday workflow, into your CRM to actually help you close more deals faster? All of these insights tied together and build a complete picture from AEs aware of how they can improve, managers coaching and guiding those AEs, but up to a very high level where the C-suite and the marketing, sales and customer success leaders can start to understand, are we steering this organization towards the right go-to-market strategy, the right market, the right message, the right timing, and are we equipping our sales team to be as successful as possible? Because if we have leading indicators that we're now stalling and falling backwards, you can get ahead of that and start to course correct and test, as well as identify new opportunities that may be emerging.
So, no, go ahead, Donald. Well, the only thing I want to say is with this is that sometimes with all of this stuff, it can seem a little bit intangible about how do you actually bring this, there's a lot of numbers here. How do we cut through this? How do we find sort of those core data points? And as we can see, and what actions do they impact off the back of them? And you see what Dan's outlined here is sort of how you can define those key insights. But I think just to give two practical examples of how we use this at Six and Flow, a couple of years ago, we looked at our sales cycles, and then we found out that there was a certain stage where our sales cycle was basically getting extended out, and we couldn't figure out what it was. And it turned out because we weren't able to prioritize our deals effectively, if a deal came in that was worth maybe 1/10 of another deal, we were still giving the same amount of time to create proposals and basically to do discovery on that deal. And we're able to essentially use data insights like this to turn around and say, well, we're going to do a micro proposal. It takes much less time for our salespeople to do. It essentially allows us to identify whether there's interest within that prospect, and it brought that stage cycle down by probably about 75%. And because we were able to just get that one clear data point and take that actionable insight into a process change, we're able to increase basically our lead conversion by around 400%. Now, whenever we added in some other aspects like video as well, that really helped with our response rates. But again, it's just using the data that you're going to get in order to find those key bits which are going to allow you to test and iterate and make process change. I think that leads on to Dan, where you're going to go with the next 7 steps. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just to round this off as a conclusion of what Adam might have introduced you to. So what we're all striving for now as an immediate priority, more so than it's ever been, is a path to predictable and efficient revenue growth. And hopefully what looks like an aspirational goal or something that's almost perceived as the promised land can be obtained through a very specific approach and process where you're making small incremental gains, but you're building momentum into that state. And it doesn't take you as long as you may necessarily think when you break it down into more manageable pieces. So this is where we really wanted to help you focusing on those activities, but again, have the data and insights that we're seeing more broadly across the whole market that will increase your confidence that this is the right path to take. And you have the measurements yourself to make it immediately effective for your organization, because you can take your organization again from this state of what they think to what they know. So to quickly recap, you want to focus on high quality data. It may be boring, but don't cut corners on this one. If you don't have the data, you will never have the insights, and it will compound over time and become a bigger problem. But don't please rely on admin for end users, because that will never, ever happen. And if you do try to enforce it, you will lose some of your best performing members of the team. You want to equip them to focus on where they're most effective and where they'll get the best results. Administrative tasks and maintaining CRM data, as much as I love it, is sadly not one of those. So you want to eradicate that, automate it, use systems for that. From that perspective, you want to really rally your organization around building high quality relationships, prioritizing the right relationships at the right time, and taking a step 3, those additional market factors such as intent. So you can start a lot of your efforts earlier in the sales cycle through to really prospects that are demonstrating a high propensity to buy. What are those micro segments? Where do we focus? What's that level of intent we're seeing? And how can we build a more effective handover from marketing to sales? So again, they're building relationships where it matters with the right people. And as you carry individuals into or companies into a sales process, you want to equip your sales team with a consistent methodology, a playbook, a blueprint for success, and something that codifies the attributes of the best performers and the insights that they're gleaning, and starts to standardize it across the rest of your team. Not just improving your individual rep quota attainment, but as you look further ahead, you'll be able to, again, bring in more reps with a high confidence of success, because they now have a template for what's required and how they can approach sales, which extends far beyond watch some calls or look at some decks and here's some broad training sessions we can go through. And then as you start to build momentum, you've got an understanding of what types of businesses, what type of intent, what type of relationships, what type of signals through the sales cycle are most influential. And you can build that into actionable insights through scores and positive and negative factors that can now add a whole new dimension to how you look at your pipeline, identifying risk faster, identifying where to focus efforts to increase your chance of success and accelerate deals through to close. And as you have this broad perspective that should lead to a more consistent cadence, don't forget those feedback loops. What you set today will not necessarily be true tomorrow, and you want to continually come back to it to identify incremental improvements to how your individual A's perform, but more broadly, an assessment of how your go-to-market is operating end-to-end, where you consider the impact these signals are having on your velocity as a whole. These sorts of insights will allow you to stay ahead, move quicker than the competition, and achieve ultimately that predictable and efficient revenue engine that you can ultimately scale against. So a quick final piece. One of the things that we're very, very excited to be collaborating on between Six and Flow and Ebster is actually a diagnostic report. I think what we're consistently hearing in market is businesses are now in that state of paralysis. We have all the different tools, the productivity and visibility, but struggling to answer that simple question of, is it effective? Really one of the common threads through this presentation today. And what Six and Flow are offering is a free diagnostic report. Simply, if you're interested, scan here, fill out a form, and a member of their team will be in touch and run that analysis for you, so you can start to now identify which factors are most influential in your win rate, sales cycles, and deal values, and immediately identify areas to improve performance. So if you're interested in following up or engaging or having any additional questions, I would encourage you to quickly scan that with your phone or contact the Six and Flow guys directly.
Okay.
Cool. So I'm not sure if we have any questions. I think, again, the classic technical challenges of testing it, and then when in flight, one of the things doesn't quite work. So I think we had a problem with the chat at the beginning of this session. But for those of you that have joined us today, if you've got any other questions, feel free to connect with myself or Adam directly on LinkedIn, or indeed connect directly with the Ebster and Six and Flow teams if you have any other specific questions you may want to answer. But I think we do have 2 or 3 questions that have come in. I think one has come in quickly here from Mark, which I'll quickly jump on, and then some of the other questions will follow up most likely offline. So Mark's question was, when we're looking at market factors, so let's quickly dive back to that. Let's dig into clusters and what clusters really mean. So a quick summary of this, Mark, is we are partnered with the best-in-class intent model, which comes from Bombora, where they're able to determine specific topics that are relative to your organization, and they track these individual companies' activities based on IP to look at their level of intent for a specific topic. So we have some highly technical examples in this piece, but let's just say, for example, you are a sales analytics company and you want to look for topics like forecasting, pipeline management, sales analytics, maybe CRM. Each of those topics actually will have an independent score for a company. And what we do is look at the influence of not just a single topic like sales analytics, but the combination of those topics when they're all tied together and the influence that they're actually having on revenue. So we have recognized that typically it's not just one topic, but a combination of topics that's most influential there. Okay, so I can see a few more a few more questions coming through, but I'm conscious of time. So what we will do is follow up with those offline. But as I say, hopefully you enjoyed today's session. I would encourage you to engage with the Six and Flow team, certainly to get insights into how you're currently operating, maybe areas to improve your results. But we need to move forward from that previous world of growth at all cost playbook to a world in which we've now got a path to predictable and efficient revenue growth. And I'm confident today, cutting through the noise and finding the signals that are most influential on revenue will lead you to that path. So if any of you have any more questions or want to understand what really is impacting our win rate, sales cycles, deal values, I encourage you to get in touch and continuing this conversation. Cool. Well, thank you again. And yes, we'll hopefully connect again soon. Take care.